and I'm on my way down, up, down, across Taliban. Beth is there having her hair rebonded. One of those mysteries of femalehood in the Philippines. If you're a foreigner thinking of coming out here, or have already planned to come out here, let me tell you, you're in for a world of mystery. There's no explaining some of it. This is the point, is that it is actually true. It's not just an opinion, it's actually true that the Asian mind does not work in the same way as the Western mind. East to West, it does not translate easily, and there will be times when you simply don't understand what's happening, and things are, I've come to realize over the nearly 9 years that I've been here now, is that some things, and I think of myself as being someone who really works at understanding things. I do. But there are times when you just cannot understand what's happening. Now, a lot of it, I admit, a lot of it is due to my own laziness for not learning the language. Because one thing that has to be said is that Filipinos are the world's worst at translating. So if you've got somebody there that is going to translate for you, that is Filipino, Filipina especially, they're going to listen to what's said, and then they're going to tell you a version of what has been said. Now, it doesn't matter how many times you say, just tell me what they said. You can tell by the way, my voice changed then when I began to do the role model on such a situation of needing to have a translation. They will say yes. They will say yes. They'll say yes all day long. And this is not something that is, it's not peculiar or specific to Filipinos. Because I remember when I was traveling in China, and I got to a point, there's a point in China where you can get a ferry very easy to the mainland, from the mainland, and your destination will be Hong Kong. And it's not rocket science. There are two, when I was there were two companies, two ferry companies that would do the job. But one goes to a slightly different place, which is not quite so convenient, is how I remember it. And I'm there in China getting back to Hong Kong. So I find somebody that I can talk to, that I can ask for directions. And so I pick someone who is a very smart looking man in his 30s, and he's in uniform, and it looks like the kind of uniform that someone who works for an airline or a travel company would wear. So I'm thinking I'm safe. So I go to him and say, "Excuse me, sir." He's very, very polite. I say, and I explained the problem. I need to get back to Hong Kong, and there are two ferry companies. I'm not quite sure which one is which, but one of them goes to this destination, which is much better for me because it's easily connected. And the man listens carefully, and he nods, And he nods like someone who knows exactly what you're talking about. So then I finish talking, and he continues to look at me. And so it suddenly dawned on me, he didn't know what the hell I was talking about. So I actually tested it. I said very pleasantly, "You don't know what I'm talking about, do you?" And he said, "Yeah, yes." So sometimes when you think you're being understood, in fact, wasn't there a movie called Lost in Translation? That was a very good movie, actually. And you think that things are as they would be in the West. Now, here's the difference, I think, between the thinking of the West and say Filipino in this particular case, because that's what people are going to be interested in, is what problems am I going to face when I come to live in the Philippines. Now, the thing is that most of the men that will be watching what I'm talking about now and listening, most of them will have a lot of time spent in talking to the lady of their dreams, who will appear to understand every single thing that they say, and the rapport will be there, chemistry will be there, the woman will be beautiful in their eyes, and all of these things will be so. Now, when you come to the Philippines, all of that is going to change. And I've seen this happen. One subscriber got in touch and said, because they were coming to the same area, could we help? And we're talking about an intelligent, accomplished man who had some high skill qualifications. So not someone to be taken lightly, accomplished. So we agreed to meet him, and we agreed to go with him to meet his new in-laws, his in-laws to be. And we primed him, said, this is what you will have to do. So let me tell you what we told him. Mainly what I told him, because it's me that has the viewpoint. Beth just takes everything for granted that, well, that's how it is. That's how we are. That's the reality. But it's not. So I tell him that the chances are that your bride-to-be may come from extremely simple background. So when she takes us home, you must be ready not to be shocked, because that sounds like I'm being arrogant, because Beth and I continue to live very very simply, shall we say. But I knew that the chances were that the lady would come across as being so westernized. She'll be beautifully dressed. She will be beautiful, and she was beautiful. So all of those things which just fit in with a westernized idea about how it's all going to be, all were there. Now, the big shock is he's going to find out how simple her life was with her family. And we told him that this is what was going to happen, mainly from me. Now, I knew that they would have prepared food. Now, if they were very simple folk, they would have gone out of their way to provide a nice meal and soft drinks, which they probably would not live by that standard for themselves, and that they would not join us at the table. The simpler the folks, the more that they would tend to serve the son-in-law coming. Now he was very nervous about meeting them. I said, they are much more nervous about meeting you. And this was true. So the next thing is that you have to allow for the fact that the money that they would have spent on providing that meal and soft drinks would be money that they could ill afford. So this is a fact of life. So the way that you redress this, and I know that there are people out there that criticize the Filipino way of life, mainly from ignorance, right? Because the Filipinos are simple people. When you get into the simple kind of life, farmers, Nanay, my own extended family, they're simple living people, and they're not ashamed. That's their life, and they're perfectly willing to invite anybody into their home without any excuses. I know that in the West, if the person that's inviting you into their home perceives that you are well off, then there will be all kinds of not excuses but disclaimers. Well, we're in a little bit of a mess at the moment. I hope you'll excuse the untidiness, even though they would have spent hours cleaning up and getting everything absolutely perfect. They're likely to make excuses for the humble home. Filipinos don't do that. Filipinos live the way that they live, and they're not ashamed of it, and they don't make excuses. In fact, the least money that they have, the less they're likely to try to excuse the way that they live. When Beth and I, last year, it's nearly last year now, we built 10 houses. I think it was last year. We built 10 houses. Then we went on to another area very close, remembering we built 5 houses. Now, when our last guests that came to stay with us, Dean and Mickey, when they came, we wanted them to see, and they wanted to see how people lived, what we had done, what our projects were, and everything. And one of the places that we took them, one of the projects that we took them to see, was the 5 house project in a pitifully poor community. I always think of these communities as places that have been forgotten, because the way that they're living is absolutely so basic. Well, we went there to build 1 house, and we ended up building 5. And it was well, it was only the second time that we'd done this, but we built a small terrace of 5 houses. And when we got there, we were walking around, and obviously we took them to see the houses that we built. And I remember going to the door, the open door of one of the houses, and the lady of the house was there, and I said, can we look at your house? And it was simple to almost a painful thing. There was almost no furniture. In a bedroom, there's a bed, and there may be a very small cabinet for putting things up, and then it will be down to a clothesline. But she made no excuses. She was very, very happy to show us her house, and everything was in its place. And I remember I said, your house is beautiful. And she agreed with me, and she thought the same thing. For her, the house was beautiful. And so this is the difference between going to see a Western house for the first time, meeting parents, and doing the same in a Philippine house. There's no excuses. There's no shame. There's no making up reasons for why it's not better than it is. It is what it is, and you're invited in to be part of that home for that moment. Well, we took our friend, and it became obvious the more we walked from the truck, the longer the walk, the more it became obvious that we were going to be looking at a very, very simple house. And it was a house, I think, on stilts. It was a NEPA house. It was either on stilts or it was a dirt floor, and they had been waiting for us, and we went there. Beth and I went with our subscriber friend and his girlfriend, and we eventually got to the house, and we were welcomed in. As they say, this is us, take us as you find us. And they had prepared a nice meal, and we were served. We were not joining in a meal with the parents. The parents made sure that we had everything that we wanted, and we all four of us sat round the table, and we enjoyed a nice meal. Now I'd primed the man in how to give money without appearing to be giving money. Now you need to pay a little more as a gift, but you need to replace the money that's been spent providing that meal. So my own particular method, which doubtless there are better ways than this, but this is the way that's always worked for me, is to take the money and to fold it, with sharp creases, very small, so that in the end the notes are only like this. They're into quarters of the size of an ordinary bill, and you press however many, and for an occasion like that, I think I suggested 3,000 pesos, so not to be overwhelming and yet not to be tight. And then when you give the money to the mother, not to the father, you give the money to the mother, and what you do is you offer your hand to shake hands, and inside your palm you have the money. And when you shake hands, you hold the mother's hand with your left hand, shake hands with the right, so that you can put the money into the hand of the mother, and you close her fingers around the money. So it's not obvious, you're not being above, you're just being kind. And that is how I've always done it. And you make no reference to the money. You don't say, here's some money for you. You don't do it. I don't do that. And I found that works. And any time that I've been around, like in the case of when we went to see the 5 houses, I thanked the lady for showing us her house, and I gave 500 pesos for a gift, and I'd folded it small, and I did it exactly as I've just told you. I never made mention of the money. It was as if it had never happened, but I just closed her fingers around the money and said thank you. And for me, that's the way that I always give money. Even with people that you're giving tips to, if you're in a restaurant, of course it's different. You can leave it on the table, you can leave it in the dish for paying, you can do all of that easily. So we were able to prepare our friend, subscriber, with what would happen. So he went in there, he prepared the money, he put the money into the hand and closed their hand around the money, and everybody was happy. He has since married and is learning the culture. It's not an easy one. I'm not going to write that off and say, yeah, oh well, he's okay now, he's learned the culture. Because here I am 9 years later, and I'm learning the culture. They think differently. Everything is different. Yes and no is different. You can ask someone, so we're not going there, and they say yes. Oh, we are going there? No. But you said yes. Yes. But I asked you, are we going there? Are we going there? Yes. But we're not going there, are we? No. No. This is funny. It's funny now. But sometimes when you really need to know the answer, whether it's yes or no, this is like a nightmare of possible misunderstandings. I'm on the road now, so I'm speeding up a bit. But you can see, so that, and the other one I told before, of there's no past, present and future. It doesn't exist. If you ask for something being done, they say yes. Has it been done? No. Well, which is it then? Yes or no? Both. Believe me, I've had that with Beth, that she has said both. So these are things which need your understanding and yet can never be understood. There is a reason for the way that it is, but it's so inbuilt. When I am trying to deal with workers who are working on the building, what will happen is I will say that I want something done in a certain way. I have construction experience. I was a contractor for some years in England, and a job in carpenter and every builder. So I know how things should be done. In particular, I am very sensitive to load and span. The span that something is between one wall and another, whether a wall is structural or whether it's just a wall separating a partition wall. I'm extremely sensitive to those things, especially in the case of the work that we're doing right now. I want that to be overbuilt. So there's boxed forms of rebar in the ground, in the footing. And we recently had a situation where one of the walls had not had a sufficient footing. The reason for that was because the level of the floor was recent. Bringing up to that level meant that the soil that's in there, that was infill, had not had time to settle. So it was still settling. In the Philippines, it's not like England. In England, you need to put at least like a meter, 3 foot or more into the ground, and then you have to have what's called hardcore, which is all broken bits. You actually buy it as hardcore, broken bricks and bits of concrete and so on. That goes in on the bottom, and then you have say maybe a foot or more of concrete, and the concrete is not mixed wet. It's not in like a flood. It doesn't go in watery. The more water, to my way of thinking, the weaker it will be. And you can see it on some of the pathways that are mixed and they're spread, and there's so much water in the top that later when they get the hard torrential rain, it actually washes that top surface off, and instead of it being nice and smooth, it's you're down to the gravel part of the concrete mix. So that's important. Well, I noticed that one of the walls had separated from the structural wall that it was adjoining to, and it was because the wall had started to sink due to an insufficient depth of the footing. They had not allowed for the fact that the soil was still sinking, and it was a big problem trying to get that over, because they didn't want to take it down, and yet it has to come down. It has to be done properly. It has to come down. It has to come down, and then it has to have a deep footing put in that should have been put in the first place. To get them to do that is a problem, because you're talking to, as I say, it's my fault because I don't speak the language, but I'm talking to Beth. She needs to do this. And as I said about the way that they interpret or translate, there's something lost in between you or in between me to Beth to the worker. Evidently something is lost. So it's fraught with the potential for misunderstandings. Well, I'm on the road now and nearly in Taliban. I should quit prattling away. And I think if you're still with me, thanks for being patient.